Hey guys, Stephen Cox here, and today I wanted to compare all of my U basses. You might be like, why are you holding the ukulele? But I'll explain in a second. But basically, I'm just going to compare all the bass ukuleles and U basses that I have. And so I'm going to do a little loop with the ukulele and play bass lines underneath it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about each one after I do all that, and maybe while doing it too, so that you can get a comparison of the different instruments. So if you like videos like these, feel free to comment, say hey. And if you're not already subscribed, then please subscribe, and we'll jump into it. All right. So I'm going to set up a little groove on the uke, and then I'm going to go through each U bass and bass ukulele. All right, so now we've got some chords and we got some rhythm. I want to start with the fretless one. It's really hard to stay in tune on this one because the dots on the top aren't quite in the right place. But still fun, It's got a cool sound to it. So the thing I like about this, okay, I'll turn the loop up too. Is that a little better? Hey Tristan, how's it going? Hey Robert, and hey Kendrick. So what I like about this one is the tone is really cool. It sounds kind of upright-esque. It's really hard to stay in tune, as you can probably tell, with the rubber strings. I feel like if they were metal strings, it'd be a little bit easier. You really have to use your ear with the fretless, so that's a little bit of a challenge. But the tone is really good on it. Yeah, so it's got a really nice tone. And this one, the brand name on the top, it almost looks like it's a French name, like Jacques, Jacqueus. But it was on like it was just on an Amazon thing. I think I searched for like fretless bass ukulele, and then tried to like organize them by price or something to find this. I have a video on it that has a little bit more information on it, but it did have a little bit of a buzz when I bought it. So I took some of the packaging from it, and I figured out that the buzz was coming from the way that the nut was cut. So they don't seem to be very consistent with cutting the grooves on there. So I'd recommend if you're going to get one of these, just know that. Another thing that's kind of a downside of this is that it does not have a truss rod. So I'm kind of scared to change the strings out for flat wounds on this because that might put so much tension on it that it might warp the neck. Still might risk it because really my ideal bass ukulele, the idea in my head that I've been wanting for a long time is a fretless with F-holes with the flat wound strings. So I might do it anyway, but we'll see what happens. See if you got any questions real quick. So I haven't noticed a whole bunch of difference. Most of mine are mahogany though, but I haven't noticed a lot of difference plugged in. I think if you're playing not plugged in, they can make a huge difference, but plugged in, probably not so much. All right. And hello, Seth. How are you doing? Hi, Gary. I still do plan to put on some flat wounds on this, and then if it doesn't work, I'll just use the flat wounds on a different bass. Great question. All right. Yep, sometimes you got to do a lot, Tristan, to fix those issues. But yeah, but that's the fretless one. The other option, of course, is maybe to buy an aftermarket nut and change it out, and then that might solve that problem. I think there's some internal buzz too, but it's got a plastic back plate. It's still got a back plate, the same kind of thing, so pretty easy to change the strings still. And the electronics are good. The tuner works really well. So that is the cheap fretless Chinese-made instrument. So a step up in price just because we're going from a non-name brand to a Kala. That's the main reason there's a little step up in price. We're going with a better brand, and they do make a better product when you really compare them. And the cool thing about this one, of course, it has a truss rod. So let me do a little bit of bass line stuff, and then I'll talk about it. So as you can see, the rubber strings have about the same tone. I believe these are the same strings on the fretless and then on this. I think they're both the Thundergut strings from Aquila. So very similar strings. Hold on one second. I've got to do something real quick. My computer's about to die. Basically right now I'm just comparing these with a 2-5-1 progression on the ukulele, and then I'm kind of walking around on these. So this has a little more brightness to the tone. It may be the EQ settings though. I think I can get a brighter tone out of the other one as well. This is fairly close to having all the EQ flat on the instrument. And on the PA, I'm not sure what it's set at. It's fairly flat there. I have the treble turned down a tiny bit on there, which might be why the ukulele is so low. But yeah. So of course the strings sound great. They have a little more punch to them, which is kind of nice. Having the frets keeps me in tune. Obviously, I need to play the other instrument a little bit more and get more accustomed to where the notes are actually in tune. But that's the idea. Tristan, what brand did you end up getting that you had to fix that way with the, what'd you say? You used a lollipop stick. Yeah, let me know what brand you got when you did that. Hello, Jamie. Hello, Alan. Or Allie. Is it Allie or Alan? I can't tell. Okay, so Seth, as far as the electric upright basses, basically neither of them were as good of a practice tool as I was hoping they would be. So I actually ended up selling both of them. First, I sold the Palatino because the Stag, at least with the body bar, that it had as a support, it allowed you to hold the bass right. But with the Palatino, it was too sideways, and you couldn't really lean against the back corner like I like to do with my upright over here. So I ended up selling both of them for that reason, and because it was too hard to push down here. And I think if I had just changed the strings out, that might have solved it. But upright bass strings are more expensive, so spending $200 to get that instead of just playing this didn't really make much sense to me. So I ended up selling both of those. Great question. All right. Oh, hey, John, how's it going? Oh, awesome! You got the flat wounds on that too. Yeah. So John over here, which might be confusing. I'll just call you Charlie for now. Charlie over here let me borrow one of his Ohanas that he had flat wound strings on before they were really a thing. So meaning they were custom made flats. They weren't Kala or Gali brand. So yeah. Well, okay. Hey, Alan. Sorry about that. But yeah, those were really cool, and I really enjoy the flats too. So I've got the flats on another bass that I'll use in a second. But I wanted to give you an idea of what this sounded like. This is the Wanderer model. So this is really, it was Kala's cheapest. They just came out with one. I believe it's called the Nomad. It's even cheaper, but I imagine it's pretty comparable to this. Although something about the electronics looked like they might have put simpler electronics in there with maybe less options. But you'll have to look at it to know for sure. But it's very, very similar, I imagine. All right, let's keep going. This is basically in price range order. So that first one was between $100 and $150 for the fretless one. The Wanderer, I believe, is still around $250. And then this is the Journeyman. It's around the $300 mark. But if you add the flat wound strings to it, it might cost a little bit more, unless you can find a company that'll do that for you and include it in the price, which I don't know if there are any, but maybe keep an eye out for that. All right. Oh, the Harley Benton. And I just taught a lesson to somebody that had a Harley Benton. Those sound pretty good. A really cheap U-bass. I'm not sure, because I'm not sure where you're located as far as where they'd have to ship it and where the shipping fees would be. So it kind of just depends on that. I get mine through Uke Republic because I live in Georgia and they're a Georgia-based company. So I actually just go drive down and talk to Mike down there. And I've gotten all of my U-basses from him, but the bass ukulele was off of Amazon. The Upright's a Shin brand, so it's a Chinese company. They made surprisingly good things for the price range. So this is really considered a student model bass. I liked it because it had an ebony fingerboard, so it's not going to like warp on me or anything. And then it just had a really nice tone. So when I was playing that at the shop, also it was a rent to own deal that this place that I got it from was doing. And so it ended up just being $100 a month until it was paid off. But that was 10 years ago, so they raised the price a little on that. But I think they still do it. If you're in Georgia, Ronald Sachs Violin Shop was doing that. So let's hear the Journeyman with the flat wound strings. It'd help if I turn the volume up. So that's what it sounded like acoustic. Yeah, so the metal strings are smoother, they're easier to play. The flat wounds have less string noise than the round wounds, which you'll hear in a second. They're very easy to slide on, probably the easiest U-bass string to slide on without having to worry about being out of tune or any of those other things. One thing about them is they don't sustain for very long. The round wounds have a longer sustain if you want to play a note and have it ring out for a long time. These ring out okay, but they tend to die out a little bit quicker. I've been having a little bit of trouble with the G string being quieter than the other three, but overall it's really good. So these are my favorite strings out of all of them. So that's why I end up playing the Journeyman a lot, because they're the most like electric bass strings to me, or kind of really they're the most like upright strings. And you can get flat wounds for an electric bass, but to me they feel the most comfortable. They have the least amount of string noise, and they have a tone that I like, and it even works to slap on them. So that's what I like about them. They have a cool tone when you slap on them too. Too scared to put the flat wound on? Yeah, so the downside of the flat wounds is they have the highest tension of any of the strings. So you do have to push down a little bit harder than you would with the rubber strings for sure. And even than the round wound strings, just a little bit more pressure. But they aren't too bad. It just takes a little bit more effort. And of course, if you change to them from one of the others, if you have a U-bass set up for rubber strings, the action is going to be higher. So that means the strings are going to be higher off the fingerboard. So, or I'll say fretboard. Sorry, fingerboard's a fretless term. But if they're higher up like that, it's just automatically harder to push them down. So just something to keep in mind. Oh, you're in Ireland. Yeah, I'm not sure what shipping's like to Ireland. But I didn't have to do much when I filed mine to get the flat wounds on there. The only groove I had to file was the E string. I may have had to do a tiny bit on the A, but honestly, I only remember doing it on the E string. And if you don't do that, it'll just sit on top rather than falling into the groove, and it might cause a little buzz, and it'll be hard to play the F, the first fret of the E string. It'll be really hard to play that note. No mods needed to switch over to flats from which one? You definitely need them if you're switching from round wound to basically the round wound nut has smaller grooves because the strings are thinner than the rubber strings. So because of the gauge difference, they designed the nut for the round wound strings to be a little bit smaller. So they honestly recommend, if you're going to put round wounds on a U-bass, that you want to change the nut out, probably for the nut that's usually for the flat wound strings. And ukulele whales, hey. Which do I prefer, upright or U-bass? Totally depends on the context. So upright bass acoustically is way more satisfying. When you play those notes, you feel it in your whole entire body. You know, it's up against you, and you can feel just the depth of it. But when it's plugged in, they're kind of similar, really. So I don't know if I really have a preference all the time. I think upright bass can be more satisfying feeling, but the U-bass is kind of satisfying in that you can bring it anywhere without having to like tote it around carrying it. And, you know, I remember going to college in Atlanta at Georgia State, having to like run around the city with an upright bass. A lot of people had the wheel that you could roll. I just had the straps on my back, and one of the straps ended up breaking from all the walking. It was crazy. So that's a really tough one. I prefer to play all of them and switch back and forth, honestly. It's fun getting to do all of this. Oh, the Wanderer with steel strings. Yeah, they didn't do that back when I bought it, but I don't recommend that you swap them one way or the other. It just depends on your preference. You can use the comparison earlier in this video to see if you like the sound of them better. But honestly, either way, if they replace the nut to have the round wound strings, you might have to replace the nut to get the rubber strings on your particular model. I'm not sure, but just something to look for before you go changing them. But great question, Jamie. Oh, good. So Gary, you've got this. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and switch to the next one. The next one's the most expensive one that I own. It's definitely not the most expensive one there is. There's some really, really cool ones like signature models like the Nick West and, you know, all these solid body ones. I really like the solid body, the California custom shops. I want to get one of the Koa models, but they're out of the one that I want currently. I have a 5-string version of it though. I'm tempted to buy a fretless 5-string Koa, but I want to put flat wounds on it. I don't think they have a flat wound pack for a 5-string. What do I think about the Ashbury basses? I've only gotten to play one once, and it was a long time ago. But I have a friend that owns one, and maybe when all this craziness is over, I can borrow his and do a video. I know you had wanted to see one a while ago, Tristan, and I would like to do a review on there and a comparison with these, since that's kind of really the original instrument with this kind of, you know, the kind of rubbery kind of strings. I know they're probably a different material, but still the same idea. And Amazon surely has some sort of UK-based site that you can order. I imagine so. So this is the exotic mahogany. And this isn't really a fair comparison with the strings, because I got to confess that I really need to change these strings. I have had them on this bass ukulele for since I've had it, which I believe I got it in July of 2017. So they're almost 3 years old, and that's kind of crazy. You can see that they like wore out on the frets. Maybe you can. Let's see. It just looks like a shadow right here, but basically on the G string and the D string especially, at every single fret there's a mark where the silver wore out, and you can see what's underneath it on the strings. But it still sounds good. The strings don't sound dead, even though they look kind of worn. They really don't sound dead. And I use this one a good amount, so it's pretty amazing how long these strings have lasted. Right. So the round wound strings are most like electric bass strings. When you have it plugged into an amp, they're not too noisy, but when you have them plugged in direct and you're trying to record videos like I do a lot of times, there's a lot of string noise, a lot of like that scrapey kind of sound, but in context, they sound really, really good. All right, so let's see. Someone said something about a loop. When I finish a loop, do I stop it on the final note or a beat after that? I hit it right when I want it to stop. So like to give you an example, it won't delete the loop. if I wanted to end this, I could end right there and then let my note ring out as the ending. Sometimes I like to fade out the looper instead. Or are you talking about when I initially make the loop? When you initially make the loop, you want to hit it on beat 1 of the measure. So if you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, you want to start it on a beat 1 and you want to end it on a beat 1. So you want it to sustain all the way throughout that last measure, and then right when you click it is when the loop will start again. If you hit it on the last beat of the measure, meaning beat 4, you essentially just turned your song into 3/4 time by doing that, and you'll chop off the last thing that you played. So when you're making the loop, you just want to click on beat 1, click off on beat 1 as well, unless the song has a pickup note, in which case, if it's like the and of 4, then when you click it there, you want to click it at the end of 4 when you're looping around too. So it's kind of confusing, but that's the idea, basically. No pun intended. You had one that a neck broke in a week? Oh no. All right, I'm gonna turn that loop back on because it's kind of pleasant. All right. So the exotic mahogany, I believe these are around 400, and now they've got ones that I really like the striped ebony. My ukulele is a striped ebony, so it'd be cool to have one of those to match that. But I think if I got that, I'd want to get a fretless one and put flat wounds on it. But I really want a solid body too, so I'm just debating on which one I'm going to get next. And, you know, the stimulus money that we all got for me needs to go elsewhere. But it's funny that it's about the same amount as what the U bass I want is as well. All right, so let's see. So that's very cool. Give Tristan as many ideas as you want. Help him out on finding a good store. And this one is just the regular wound strings. They're silver-plated collar wound strings. I don't know if they make anything else other than the silver-plated ones now, but this was all that they had when I got this one. Now, I slapped on the Journeyman earlier, so I'm going to do a little bit of slap on here too. Yeah, so in this context, like plugged in, the slapping is going to cut through a lot better with the round wound strings. Another thing that I really like about the round wound strings is that harmonics ring out very clearly on them. And then now for the ukulele itself, the exotic mahogany, I like this different pickup. I feel like it is a slightly better pickup, and that you can hear it in the tone. And I've played one with rubber strings, so I feel the same way. And that one had the I don't even know how to pronounce the strings. The pahoho or pahoe. I don't know how to pronounce them. Someone was saying you pronounce every vowel in it, but I'm still going to butcher it, so I'll just stop. I took the back plate off of this because one thing that I don't like about the back plate is it rattles. So at first it was great. The magnet was, fully magnetized. It stayed on really well. And then about a year after having it, I think it just started to get a little demagnetized. And so it stays on, but it rattles, which sometimes even comes through the amp. So I just take the back plate off. It's right here though. Nothing wrong with it. It looks really nice, but that's an issue for me. So today I just took it off there so it wouldn't rattle. All right, let's see. So that's basically all of them. Basically, no pun intended. So is there anything that you want to hear on each one so that you can get a really good comparison? Maybe I can go through and not talk for a second and just play them back to back without a loop. So I'm going to do that really quickly. I still have not done more research on the Thunder Red strings. I know that Magnus, that has the Play Ubase site, he did way more extensive comparisons with the Thunder Red. So if you're curious about those, message him either on the Ubase Freaks group on Facebook or just on YouTube if you can find him. His last name's kind of hard to spell for me, but Magnus, that does the Play Ubase site. Journeyman, please. Donnelly. Oh my goodness. So Donnelly is really hard. You want me to do Donnelly on every single bass? I'll just do like the opening lick instead of the whole song, but like. Yeah. So there it is on the whoops, forgot to turn the volume down. There it is on the Raumon strings on the Exotic Mahogany. I'll do that for a minute on the Journeyman. It's easier on the flat wound strings. Doesn't mean I'll play it perfectly every time, but it is easier. Oops. Help if I practice it a little bit. So there it is on the Journeyman. The Wanderer. Okay. And then the fretless one's going to sound really bad because of me, not because of the instrument, necessarily. Because it's really hard to stay in tune on a fretless. So bear with me on this. If it's horrible, I apologize in advance. But you get the idea. Okay, so that's what it sounds like on each of them. So as you can hear, there's a lot of string noise on this one, but that may be the way I have it EQ'd. To give a fair comparison on this one, I'm going to turn it to flat rather than having the knobs up louder because it looked like I had them all boosted. It does make it a lot quieter. Let me turn it up on here. Yep. A lot of string noise. But to me, this one looks the coolest. It's a shame that it's not the best made because it looks really cool. But it has its fair share of issues. And I think if you buy it through Kala, you'll get just a better quality instrument. All right. Okay, yeah. So John agrees, or I'll call you Charlie. That's right. Even though I think it's your dog, right? The plates are pretty bad about staying on, but at first they weren't. It's crazy. All right. Sly and the Family Stone. I don't think I know that particular song. So one thing I didn't do on all of them yet is I haven't done any tapping. So I'm just going to go through in price order again and just do some like just generic tapping kind of stuff. Obviously, it's going to be hard for me to stay in tune on the fretless. All right. Oh, price order. Right. Let's do some tapping on this one. So that's always fun. Now, I'm not sure that I've done much tapping on the flat wound strings, so this might be something fairly new, although I may have done it because I usually do a tapping test on the review videos. So you notice there's a little more string noise because it's hard to tap really accurately on the A and E string, especially with the metal strings. You'll hear them click a little bit more, whereas the rubber strings won't do that as much. Okay. And last but not least, the exotic mahogany with the metal round wound strings, silver plated colors. And remember, these strings are like 3 years old, so maybe it'd be a little bit brighter and you'd have a little more string noise if they were brand new. So you can tell there's a little bit more string noise. You have to be super accurate to not get that, and there'll be more of an attack at the beginning of the tapping. Okay, so hopefully that'll help a little bit. Let's see, any questions? Gonna learn death metal? Okay. As far as the thumb rests, if you want to have your thumb placed in a certain place, that kind of helps. And I'm not positive, but Ukulele Whales, were you the one that made the beginner video where you were talking about putting your thumb up here? I know that you can reach all the strings there, but the only reason that I don't leave my thumb up there, I might do it for the E string on occasion because that feels more like the spread that my hand would have on the electric bass. But when you reach further, you're kind of pulling your hand out, and sometimes if you're playing for a long time, that can cause a little bit of aches over here. So what I typically like to do instead is I leave it just sitting on the front and kind of floating for the E string, and then for the other strings, I just rest it lightly on the E string as kind of a way to mute. And someone pointed out that I was even doing something called the floating thumb technique, where basically I was moving down to mute the other strings on certain songs as well. So it can kind of help you mute if you move that. But the main reason moving your thumb is kind of a cool idea is because then your hand doesn't have to stretch out. And so it kind of helps you to have like your same speed on each string, rather than when you stretch out, sometimes it gets a little bit harder to move fast as well. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's just for speed's sake, I think sometimes it gets in the way. Dun, dun, dun. What was the joke? I missed the joke. Oh, the death metal. Yeah. If you're going to do death metal, you probably would want either the flat wounds or the round wounds because they have the higher tension. I know you're kidding, but I'm just going to answer this anyway, because you're probably going to want to use either a pick or the 3 fingers, and the pick will get caught up on the rubber strings more than likely, and your fingers will get caught up enough to where it's really hard to play super fast. Whereas here I can use 3 fingers. I'm just going ring, middle, index. But yeah, I think that if you're going to do death metal on one of them, you may want to do that. I know you're kidding, but still. Oh my gosh. Well, Tristan, good luck with the death metal on your U-bass. If you do it, maybe post a video. I've been enjoying your videos too. All right. Right. Yeah, I think the stretch just gets a little too far for G. So, I mean, try a thumb rest. Let me know how it goes. I'd love to get your opinion on it, honestly. Kendrick, that works especially well if you have a 5-string because you can rest your thumb on the B. Yeah, on a 5-string and a 6-string electric bass, it's almost essential for the muting for you to play, because if you have the B string ring out even slightly, it sounds like thunder. Whereas an E string, it's there, but it's not like overpowering everything. So on a 5-string bass, it's just really essential to have some method of muting the 5th string. And the easiest way, of course, is to just let your thumb rest on it, or do the floating thumb technique so that it can mute that one as well as the E string as you're going down. But yeah, I have to do that because of the 6-string basses that I play sometimes. All right, so now I've got a fun idea. I'm going to try to make a loop with all the basses. So here we go. I'm going to start with this one since I'm holding it. Should I start with a bass line or like a drum part? Oh, it's bedtime. All right. Well, thanks for stopping in, Ukulele Whales, and I will see you probably on the on the Facebook group later on. But thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you stopping by. All right, so I'm going to start with a drum part, I think. And then we'll go on. Okay. Nope, that didn't sound very in time. I'm going to do that again. Sometimes we all make mistakes. Okay, here we go. So this is a Digitech Jam Man. I love when I hit the loop pedal, it just entirely changed the groove that I had. So the loop station was a Digitech Jam Man, but it's an outdated one. So right now I'm actually using a PA system, and it's a Behringer PA system. It's just what I have set up, and I'm recording it through an AKG Perception microphone that I use for a lot of my videos. If you use the pick, it works pretty well on the flat wound strings and the round wound strings. If you do it with the rubber strings, you have to angle the pick down. I actually have a video that explains that pretty well, to answer your question, Brian. But yeah, just to add to that, if you angle the pick, you can still get it to work on the rubber, but doing it kind of flat with the string, it'll get caught up on the rubber really, really bad. Hope that answers your question. All right, so that's the Journeyman. Let's see, the Fretless is the only one I haven't done. It's a little hard to stay in tune, but I guess a lot of the U basses have a little bit of issue, and bass ukuleles in general, with the strings pushing down evenly or not on the pickup. So if you're having a little bit of trouble with that, you can boost the frequency that affects that string the most. So I'm gonna add a little bit of high frequency to see if that helps the G string be a little bit louder. Yeah, it made a big difference on this one. All right. I haven't slapped on this one before, so I'm going to do a little bit of slap on here. Or if I have, I forgot about it. Turn it down a little bit too. Cool. So it's pretty cool. It's got a very, very strong attack. Not a lot of the note coming through, more of the percussive part coming through. Let's go through these again. It's kind of fun doing slap there. And the Journeyman, I'll turn them up a little bit so the slap actually comes through too. And now for the Wanderer with the round wound strings. So one thing I want to say about doing slap on the round wound strings is when you go to pop the note, the string kind of rolls under your finger and it's really weird, and it doesn't do it nearly as much on any of the other strings. So it's just something to get used to. And once you get used to it, it won't affect your timing or anything. It's not a big adjustment, but it's just a small thing I wanted to mention. All right, so I haven't looked at the questions or comments in a minute. I'm going to read through them and see if there's anything that can help you all with. You have to use a pick, okay. As far as the question about flat wound strings on non-kalas, I believe you can. I think you should make sure that the instrument has a truss rod, which I'm going to break that rule when I try to put them on that fretless U-bass, but bass ukulele. But I think in general you want to have a truss rod in there so that you're not putting too much tension on the neck, and those strings are higher tension, so that's just one thing to keep in mind. But yeah, I think you could. All right. And I don't know of any other brands that are doing it. Maybe Labella has some. Thought I heard some talk about maybe they have some flat wound strings for U-bass, but I know that Gali does. And actually, there is a company that makes custom ones, so you could reach out to that one. I believe it's like octave4plus.com, but they're going to be a lot more expensive if you go that route. kind of just enjoying listening to the groove. Advantage to loop pedals, you don't have to play the whole time. Yep. The slap on the rubber strings doesn't cut through as well, and I believe you need some sort of like pedal or some sort of compression probably just to help it cut through. But even Davey504 has a video where he does slap on it, and if you notice, it sounds pretty good the way he does it, and I think that he did a lot of after EQ work on it. But you'll notice that on his song, he doesn't hit the E string very often. He mostly slaps the open A string because the E string just doesn't have the note just won't cut through as well, basically. Okay. But yeah, I do think that slap is better on metal strings for sure. Yeah, the Wanderer has a surprisingly good sound for how inexpensive it is. One thing I do want to say is when I got this U-Bass and the Journeyman, I didn't have to do any adjustments to them for them to be fully playable all the way up the neck. And with the Wanderer, I did have to adjust the truss rod a tiny bit, and that fixed everything. Well, it fixed almost everything. It moved the buzz from down here to way up here on a fret, like maybe the 15th fret on the A string buzzes a little bit, but I don't play that note very often, so I sacrificed that to have the low notes not there. So the cheaper ones, they're still good, but you might have to do an adjustment to them. I had to do the same thing with the Hadian or Haydeen that I gave away. I had to make a truss rod adjustment on that one as well. So it's just something about that lower price range. You'll probably have to adjust it to not have fret buzz in certain spots. All right. Whoa. Let's see. I'm trying to read through all of them. I think that you could put the Kala strings on other bass ukuleles because they're designed to have similar strings. You just want to just think about the structure of the other instruments and make sure that they're going to hold them properly. I would say make sure they're the same scale. So Kala U-basses have between a 20 and a 21 inch scale. So if you have a 23 inch scale, you probably don't want to put the flats on it. If you have a 25 inch scale, it just flat out won't work. There won't be enough string to do, or the intonation might be kind of weird on those. So just an idea. All right. Interesting. Well, Kendrick, I have not had that issue at all, so I just don't have anything to say about it at all. But I know that if it's the pickup, if you think it's a thing that's just wrong with that particular pickup, spending a little bit more money, you end up with the shadow pickup, and I've never heard anybody complain about those, but I think I have heard one other person. It may have been you, or you and U-Bass Freaks on the Facebook group. It may have been you saying something about it, but I think I did hear one other person say something about the Wanderer having that issue. I've had zero issues with it, so I just don't have anything to say on it. So with Luna, I know that they had one that technically had flat wound strings, but it was tuned an octave higher than the bass. So I didn't really know that they had made flat wounds for the bass models that really have the low E string and stuff. But I'm curious to know if you find one that does have that, or if you have more information on their strings, just send it my way. Either in that Facebook group, or you can message me on Facebook. I think it's still /Stephen Cox Bass to find me on there if you want to. The Facebook group is called U-Bass Freaks. Well, I heard it a long time before the live stream, so I'm not sure if it was you or if it was somebody else. But I read it on the Facebook group on someone's comment about the pickup on the Wanderer not working. So that's for Kendrick, by the way. All right. So does anybody else have any questions, or do you want me to play something really quickly at the end here? Is there something that I missed on all the U bases that you had a question comparing them that you just want to know the answer to? Just let me know. I'm going to fade this groove out. All right. I think it'd be kind of cool. I'm going to build a loop from the other way unless I see some questions. Okay, they may not have flat wounds. I didn't know for sure. Okay, I'm going to start a loop and try to do the percussive part with the Wanderer because I think that sounds a little bit different. Probably be a little bit unique. And I'm going to do the drum part on one, which is kind of weird to pick the Wanderer to do that, right? It's actually surprisingly good and sounds a little bit like drums. So let me lay down some drums first. All right. Help if I turn the volume up, I guess. Here we go. All right. Thanks, John. Do I have electric basses? I could do a collection of those as well, right? But honestly, some of them need some setup work. But this is my most recent. So maybe I'll end it playing the full-size electric. So this one's a Squire, believe it or not, but it's a jazz bass. So it's the Classic Vibe series that's like modeled after the 1970s basses. So it's got a really good slap sound because the pickup's really close to the bridge. But yeah. Oh, turn the volume down, right? All right, guys, I think that's about going to do it for me today. But thank y'all so much for hanging out. Real quick, last little question or kind of comment. As far as the Hadean or Hadeen, um, I didn't have any issues with it except for having to do the truss rod adjustment. So it was buzzing not at the beginning of the neck, but kind of right here in the middle. And I think that just meant that the neck was too flat. So loosening the truss rod a little bit gave it a little bit of a curve, just a tiny bit. And that pretty much solved the problem for that one. I have no clue as far as the pickup. I know that there was a complaint about the Wanderer having an issue going out. I have no clue if the pickup is any better in the Hadean with as far as that goes. You'll have to read reviews and check that out. I know that mine worked great until I did the giveaway, but I didn't keep it for a full year or anything, so I don't really have a whole lot of information on the quality of that. So try to follow up with a review from somebody that kept it a little bit longer than I did. But as far as I know, it was a great instrument too. From playing it, it sounded great, as well. All right. Well, thank y'all for tuning in, and I'm gonna try to do this weekly. So tune in next week. I think 7 o'clock on Saturday is a pretty good time. When we finally get back to gigging, I might end up having shows that night, so I might change the time at that point. But I think for now it's a good time. So I'll see you guys on the next one.